Check out that sexy headgear. It's Todd, Dammit, Kerns, everybody. Once again here, brought to you by the fine folks at Dammit Wear. This is the new Have a Nice Day, Dammit hat. Also comes in a t-shirt. Might come in G-string. I'm not quite sure. I haven't really paid too much attention to that, but I knew it was a t-shirt and a hat. Anyway, today, a very good friend of mine, a man I've known for almost 15 years, a really good friend, so this might get a little bit fun and laughy and just a couple of pals hanging out. But ladies and gentlemen, from one of my favorite bands, Tesla, this man has been in the band. I've lost track of it exactly, but he's been in the band quite a long time now. Ladies and gentlemen, my dear friend, Dave Roode. Yeah!
Why do they do that voice? Like, we can put a man on the moon. If there's an automated voice to tell you something,
I know, it's
like
have
to talk like a weird robot from 1985.
It's kind of funny that you're even like your GPS is like actually a human voice now, but
Yeah.
they still have these like robot voices, and you're like, really? Like, I mean, part of it might be my own sort of like sci-fi nerd thing. Maybe I prefer the robot voices. Lost in space or something.
Yeah. Some AI helper bot.
Yeah, exactly.
Help me, my function.
Yeah. Danger, Will Robinson.
Yeah.
So we were just kind of touching base a little bit because I immediately I feel like we're saying too much good stuff. I have to start recording.
Yeah.
Otherwise it'll get too good and we'll have missed out on all of it. But so how have you been? How have you been during all this? We've touched base a couple times, but nothing really too in depth. But during the pandemic, that little thing called the pandemic, yeah.
That little thing, 2020. Yeah, dude, it's I've been fine. I've been lucky good, and just looking at the upsides of finally getting to stay home with the family.
Right.
A year and a half with my son, who's
totally
8 now, and I left 3 weeks after he was born, so it's like you're always in and out, month here, month there, so and same with my wife. So the cool upsides of that is sort of what I focus on. So that has just been really, really nice to just settle in, and aside from that, I just pretty quickly, when everything started to shut down and all the shows got canceled, I started realizing, some people were optimistic. Yeah, maybe things will be open by July. I was like, right. Man, I read a lot of news. I don't think anything's happening this summer. Yeah. I started putting the piece together. So I said, well, just in case, I'd always taught guitar. Like, before I was in Test, I was teaching guitar kind of part-time just on my own. And I kept it up because I actually really liked it. And so whenever we came home from tours, I do 1 a week, 2 weeks, sometimes less, sometimes more. It would just sort of because I actually just enjoy it. And when you teaching stuff, a lot of times you then get all excited and like start learning. Like I would teach something, and then after the lesson, I'll go learn more of whatever, like just total nerd stuff. So I always just kept up because I actually liked it. And so luckily I had a few regulars, and so I started putting out some, Instagram posts like, hey, I'm going to teach some lessons. And a lot of people hit me up. And so for over a year now, I've been teaching Monday through Friday, full-time guitar lessons on Skype.
That's a nice little side hustle to just have in your back pocket, dude. Because I mean, just teaching guitar is a whole other thing. Like it's a whole other conversation, because I'm actually not really, I realize how unqualified I am to teach anybody anything. I can maybe talk ad nauseum about like, I don't know, superheroes or something like that, sci-fi. But I realize, obviously there's different levels of guitar playing, but are you learning like what's the craziest shit you're learning to teach people? Because it keeps your game sharp too, right?
It hella does. I mean, a lot of stuff is kind of theory based, which like freaks people when we talk about theory. It's like, oh, that's like, like Berkeley School of Music, like it, because it's like, oh, that takes all the fun out of it, But I look at it as like real world theory, where it's just like why stuff works and why you use this cool scale over this cool corporation, and it sounds like a rock and roll song. And
totally, yeah.
You're not just like guessing, because there's a lot of guys who are really good, but they don't really know why it works. And so if something changes, they're kind of out of love. Like,
right.
Yeah. and it's easier and more fun when you don't have to do that. You know,
Totally,
so,
yeah.
yeah, just a lot of stuff like that. And then, you know, sometimes, dude, you know what? I had to figure out Anastasia.
Really?
That song is no joke. That's like a finger exercise. Like just that. I sat here for like an hour, just like over and over and over and over. Like, and then every day I had to. It was weird. I hadn't had to like work at something and like, well, I'll get a little bit better every day. You know, like I tell my students, like it gets better. And I had to do it for that song. Like, Jesus, that's hardcore.
That's really funny because it's almost like when Slash first started playing that for us, I was like, this has a bizarre like Euro like classical thing to it that is so not Slash, but he came up with it and it was like, you know, the song itself actually doesn't really sound Euro, and you know, it has a very sort of rock and roll thing to it, but that piece that he came up with, he actually started doing that during a guitar solo in the previous tour. He would play, you know, a guitar solo by himself, and then he would do this by himself, like, and we were like, that's interesting, you know, and then he sure enough turned that into a song. But it's like, that's really interesting that you had to learn that and go like and teach it to some poor guy.
Hey, look, he's really good. He nailed it. But it was like, damn, it sounded hard. But when I actually learned, I was like, oh man, this is like really hard, you know?
Oh, really? I've never even tried. That's why my bass parts are like, da-nut, diddle-diddle, doodle-diddle, diddle, ba-nut, doodle-diddle-doodle. Let him do the heavy lifting, and I'm back there just looking handsome. Yeah, trying it. Yeah, that's right. I could play all four of these strings on occasion. Yeah.
All four.
At least two or three of them, anyway. Yeah.
Generally, maybe three.
Yeah. If when forced, but so that actually takes it into an interesting area, because clearly you know, I've known you as long as I've known you. I think I'm trying to think when we met, because I believe you were already a member of Tesla by this point, because it's been 15 years now or something, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's so weird because in the few interviews I've done this year or whatever, it's been like, yeah, 15, but I just kind of don't count this last year. So I'm used to saying 14. And it's weird when people say 15, but like, well, I guess if you're looking at the calendar, it's correct. So,
you know, which is the way we keep track of things, I suppose.
Would be on the calendar. So yeah, 15.
But it's what's fascinating to me is it's like when you stepped into that role, you're like, who's this young guy stepping in here? And you could hang. It wasn't like you were like, so when you talk about all this stuff, what you're teaching and whatnot, clearly you had a knack for it. So where did this come from? Where did you grow up?
In the Bay Area, like
in the
Oakland area, yeah.
And were your parents cool with you picking up a guitar? Was that weird?
No, you know, I was really lucky. Both of my parents are teachers, and as long as I did all right in school, they were cool with it. You know, that was always the caveat. Like, as long as you're not getting bad grades and go to college, well, you're good. And you know, so I wanted to take guitar lessons since I was a little kid, and my mom made me wait, which I always tell this story, but it's true. Like, I'm really glad, because like when I was 5, I was like, please. But man, playing guitar is really hard when you're 5.
Yeah.
It's hard at any time, but you know, like most people who end up doing it for a living, they always say, I picked it up when I was 12 or 13. Because that's the right physical age. You're kind of mentally prepared. And sometimes they're a little younger. I started when I was 9 and was very lucky that I had the support. My mom helped me, and I had a good teacher. So I did stick with it through that difficult learning phase.
Totally.
You know,
otherwise the guitar ends up in the closet with the karate outfit and the ham radio or
whatever. Like a stack of unbuilt car models, you know.
Hey, I'll finish those models. Yeah. So how old were you when you officially picked it up?
When I was 9. I started,
9. That's still very young.
It's like now, you know, I was like, well, yeah, I thought it was normal, but now, you know, it's like, well, no, that's actually pretty young. I've taught people that young, and it works, but it's just rare because the thing is, it's physically hard. Like, your fingers can't reach, and you don't have the muscles, and you know, 9-year-olds get distracted.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So do I. But 9-year-olds, they don't know how to play a G chord yet, so it's harder to do a lesson.
Well, it's funny because Slash he didn't pick up a guitar till he was 15 years old, which is always kind of inspiring, in that if you really kind of find your thing and you just put everything into it, you can do it. But you're more like me in the sense that I was about 11, probably when I picked up a guitar and started playing some chords. I I loved punk rock and stuff like that. So I never really had that kind of like, let's hide in the basement and go play fucking Anastasia all day long. You know, I was kind of like, why play that? We could just go Bennett. We could do that part. I'll do that part. I'll do the Malcolm Young part. That kind of, that's it. I was actually kind of more attuned to that kind of world. And I still actually am. I always loved that kind of side. But you, I assume, did it come pretty easily at that age? Did it?
No. I always tell people, like, I wasn't a natural. Like,
really?
It was, I mean, it wasn't like, it was just like a struggle like it is for anybody, you know? So I always remember the difficulty of like learning a D chord and like how hard it was just to like, you know, because you play for a long time, it's easy to forget, like, it's like, oh, well, this is a simple 3-chord strumming song. It's like, oh, it'll be easy. But if you've only been playing for a few months, going from D to G is really hard. And and you'll play the D and maybe you can get that 3 bars, but then you have to stop and go.
Yeah, I know.
I remember that. I was like, God, that really sucked. And then after you do it for a while, eventually you're like, oh yeah, that used to be hard. You know, like you forget it. It just like disappears. And you know, so I was like, I was not a natural, but I was really into it. I was really into you know, all I ever wanted to do was music, and I was a singer. I wanted to be a singer. I was really into pop, like, you know, Michael Jackson and Prince and all that stuff.
Sure, yeah.
And the 80s stuff that was on the radio back then. And it was, so I was learning just tons of songs, Beatles, Stones, old rock and roll, Johnny Cash, you know, folk songs. That's kind of how I learned. And I would sing them. And then actually, coincidentally, it was Appetite for Destruction that changed my path, because I wanted to be a singer and like more pop. And then I got that record in 6th grade and was like, oh, hey, something turned on.
Right.
I want to play guitar for real.
Is that right? Yeah.
So it was lucky because I'd already been playing for like 3 years. And so then I switched to another teacher. I got an electric, and then, you know, that guy started teaching me scales and getting into improv and more rock stuff. Then I got to another teacher in high school who was like total shredder, Satriani guy who used to teach with Satriani. So like I learned all that kind of vibe too. And I took lessons a long time up through high school. And then after high school, I just then sort of synthesized it all and just sort of, you know, stayed in, you know, I was that guitar nerd who, I didn't do anything. I didn't party, I didn't get in trouble, I didn't do anything. All I did all of high school and then college was just stay at home in my room.
I appreciate that. But look how it paid off for you. I mean, it's one of those things where, you know, because like young guys, like when you're young and you fall in love with the guitar, it's sort of like you either do what you did, which is like really kind of woodshed, or you become like, find 3 other friends who play and just go and make a horrible racket together until that racket's not so horrible.
Totally, dude.
And how long was it before you started like playing with other guys and stuff like that?
You know, it was weird because I started playing music early, but I was a late bloomer with everything else. I played with a couple of people. We had like, it wasn't the school jazz band, but actually like an extracurricular jazz band. But I remember we did like a jazz version of a Porno for Pyro song. It wasn't like true jazz.
Which song?
But it was Pets.
Wow, that's so crazy. Yeah, it's amazing. I love that song.
Sorry. Yeah, me too. That whole record is killer. But you know, like sax and trumpet and all that. But I didn't do like a real band like most people would do their high school garage band. Probably till I was like 18 or 19. And I don't think I did a first gig until around then too. And then I did pretty much though jump quickly into it. You know, once I started, I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. And you know, yeah, I was going to college, but always just sort of killing time trying to get music happening, and was just going full bore into that. Like, you know, I was in bands and it's like, hey, look, there's 7 days. So we can rehearse 7 days a week, guys. Are you down with that? And like, we were like, what the hell are you talking? I was always the one dude like, hey, we could rehearse. Like, so finally, eventually, you know, you got to weed through the guys who aren't really in it all the way until you find the bands, the guys that are like, fuck yeah, there's 7 days, let's rehearse, you know. Exactly.
You bring up an interesting point, because I always forget about that stage where you have to find guys who are as crazy as you are, like who are like, isn't this great? Like some guys are like, yeah, but I gotta go, you know, at my dad's shop or whatever. They've got something. It's kind of like the music thing is just something else that they do, where for me it was like, that's it, you know, that's the whole thing. So were you singing at this point as well, or were you just more focusing on being a guitar player, or how did that all work? Because I know you sing in your own thing. I think you got a great voice. So
thank you so much, dude. You have a great voice, man. I
oh,
love.
That's why I complimented you. Just kidding. Thank you. I knew you'd come back with that really fast.
But it's very true. I've always thought, dude, Todd can sing his ass off.
Oh, start.
Listen. So, yeah. So I was really into singing. You know, as a kid, I was like, you know, choir and like the school play. God, I'm sweating like mad.
I know it's 114 or something like that in Vegas today, so it's like ridiculous.
You know, I always tell people it's like probably like 80 or something here in the Bay Area, but none of the houses have insulation or air conditioning. So
right, yeah.
Probably like 95 in my room right now. So that's why I don't just have my Steve Vai fan blowing for free.
Yeah. I call it the KK Downing, but either one works.
That's it. So it's just so I don't have yet another bout of heat stroke today.
I understand, trust me.
But I kind of stopped singing for a lot of that time when middle school, high school, because I was just like, I just want to be a guitar player. And
right.
But and then I started getting into writing songs more, and I'd sing backups and whatever. But
sure,
it wasn't really my thing. And then after I had been in a band, I'm the deal. Like when you do find the guys that are all into it, and you try for hell years, and everyone quits their job and rehearses, and you put all the money into it, and then eventually after 5 years it doesn't work, and so
right.
So it was sort of that. Everything was fine, and just okay, this isn't working, done. And so when I left that band, I was like thinking I'll move to LA or I'll move to Austin or somewhere cool. I want to find a great singer. And then the more I just started looking for people and dealing with it, I actually went to a vocal coach in the city here in San Francisco and asking if he knew anybody, if he was like working with any cool singers. And he wasn't, but then I just started taking lessons. And then I was like, gosh, sure would be easier if I didn't have to find some diamond in the rough before I start my next band. And by this point, I was already writing. So I was like, well, if I'm writing the songs and doing stuff, I could just start my own.
Exactly. Then you just all I need is a bass player and a drummer, and you can play anywhere, really. Yeah.
That's exactly it, right? And so it's just, KK is just too much.
Yeah, no, it's great. I feel left out, but I don't have. Did you so at that point, did you consider, like, was it moving towards the Dave Roode band at this point, like more of a solo type idea, or is it still like kind of a band, or what was the plan?
Well, initially it was just, it was also, it's crazy, like, because I don't know, but you probably had the same experience where you like talk to other guys in bands, especially like the younger bands that are opening, a lot of them have it like all this master plan and everything's like, my shit is so haphazard. My whole life is just a fucking accident.
I'm the same way. I remember somebody once bringing up, so what's your 5-year plan? And I looked at him like, what are we, like in a accounting office here? It's like, there's no 5-year plan. I'll be lucky if I'm still doing this in 5 years. It's like, and luckily that was 30 years ago, so I'm still here.
It's working so far. Yeah. And the same here. So I didn't have a plan. I was just like, once I decided, I got really excited. Like, you know what? I kind of like my voice, and the voice was punk rock. It was like I would just start singing in the car along with Oasis records.
Right.
I like this, and I'm just gonna go for it. And I don't care if it's perfect or whatever. I did take some lessons, but it was just sort of like that was the punk aspect, and I got really into it, and I just started doing it fast. And I was thinking, well, I've done this whole years and years in a band together, trying to make it, and I know how difficult it can be because like you got to find the right guys, and after a year, one dude quits, and after 2 years, someone gets married. So well, why don't I just do my own thing? And it was more just like the ease of use. Like, well, I can probably start faster, and if I'm not tied down to certain people, if the drummer quits, I can just get another drummer, and it's not some huge lineup thing,
or even if it's like he's got something going on, maybe you can find someone to fill in or whatever it is.
Totally. And that was my plan. And I knew a couple guys in the Bay Area who did that. I was like, gosh, why don't I just do that? And so that was really how it happened. It really was a solo project at the beginning, you know. And I mean, because geez, if I thought it was gonna be a band, I really wish I got up with a cool name, because I feel weird using my solo name as a, you know, I wish I'd had a band name, but at this point, you know, kind of committed.
It starts to become kind of an issue later on, where it's like, well, if you call it band whatever, you know, if it's Dave Roode, they'll go, oh, Dave, let's go see Dave. You know, it's right. Like, but when it's like, no, he's called this now, then you got to go, this is a great name, by the way.
Yeah, oh, that's what about featuring?
Featuring featuring who? No, yeah, they're fine. No. ...
in parentheses. That's probably already a successful band in Brooklyn.
Exactly. They sound pretty prog to me, yeah. Or maybe really like hipster indie kind of thing. I'm not sure. But yeah, no. So then, did you come up in any sort of like playing cover songs kind of thing, or was it always sort of more like writing and that? I guess because you were like sort of like learning guitar. A lot of learning guitar is learning other pieces and other stuff. So at what point does that shift from like learning everything from Satriani to Steve Vai to I'm going to start writing some songs?
Yeah, that just sort of happened organically, because the first, you know, all through high school, I didn't write too much. It was more little things here and there, but more just, I didn't, again, haphazard. I just was going. It was like, this is so fun. I love this. And I'd play along to Metallica. I'd play along to Guns N' Roses and play along to the radio station.
Yeah.
And I was really, it wasn't writing, but I was really, really into improv. So I would, you know, before you could just pull shit up on your phone or a computer, like I'd had the little handheld cassette player. So I'd record a rhythm section for like 5 minutes, and then I'd rewind it and then solo over it.
Cool.
You know? And I wouldn't record that. It was just for me, you know. And
sure, yeah.
So there was tons of that. I would do that for hours, and then like again playing on the record. But the writing stuff probably, I mean, in my early 20s, and when I was kind of doing a band thing. And
what kind of band was that? Was that like a hard rock band, or like a metal band, or was it more like
pretty classic rock? You know, like it was always. I mean, Guns N' Roses has been a really huge influence on me, and since I was a kid. So
I'm not familiar. So I
mean, they were an American hard rock band. They came out in the late 80s.
Okay. I tried to play along with that. I broke the fourth wall. I'm a terrible improver. That's great. I totally understand that. You know, we all got clobbered with the Guns N' Roses club when it came out. It was just sort of like, are you serious? Have you heard this? He's cursing in the second song, or it's like, yeah.
Bad words, Jesus. The cover, you know.
Yeah, and the cover, they're skulls. Yeah, but is there so at the point when you get down to thinking about singing yourself, and the songs you're writing at that point, you start. The best thing about writing when you're singing is you go, well, I'll write them, you know, in the you know, so I'm singing them, so there's no sort of like. If you think, oh, that's too high to sing, I'll just adjust the key or sing it however you sing. Yeah.
It's so crazy, right? Yeah, I mean, that was a whole new world too, you know. And actually, honestly, I didn't do that at first. I just sometimes would write stuff that I couldn't sing too well, and then realize on stage like 6 months later, oh God, this is really hard. Maybe I should change the key.
Every singer does that anyway. I always think to myself, like watching, like I was watching some Rush earlier, and it was like Temples of Syrinx, and Geddy's just like out of control. And I'm thinking, I wonder how he feels about that at 60 years old, having to sing that. I mean, I'm sure everybody feels like, what was I thinking? Because the studio is such a different animal. You're in there, you're kind of like, okay, you could do it. You could do a line at a time. You could do a syllable at a time if you want to. But I was never smart enough to do that. I just sort of like, no, we'll just roll it. We'll sing it, you know. And then you realize, but of course that's different than like 7 nights in a row for a month, and then you got to sing that song, and you go, what was I thinking?
I mean, it's like, hey guys, can we do this one on baritone guitars?
Bring
up the berries. All right.
Suddenly you got this Barry White voice. Love to love you, baby. That's what me and Miles always laugh, because we'll be sitting in the van and like a Depeche Mode song comes on. I go, this guy's a fucking genius. You know, your own personal. I'm like, Dave Gahan is a genius, because he's like, he sounds great doing that, but you know, he never has to have that kind of. he's never thinking to himself, I should sing really high there. Like, he's just like, why would I sing there? That's not how I sing. You just kind of realize that that's how he sings, and he just sings in his comfort range.
It's so cool. And it's one of those like epiphanies of like the most simple thing that takes you like years of weird circuitous ramblings to end up like, oh yeah, maybe you could write something you can sing, fucking moron. like, so years later, I realized maybe I should write in my range. But you know, it is cool to have that freedom and be like, you know, like I said, if you're writing the vocals with it, you know, one thing I would notice, like, I think vocals tend to sit better in the song when you write them while playing it.
That's true.
Right? I feel like, because you can write to anything, and sometimes it's great, right? And a lot of great songs have been written that way, but I feel usually the ones that really work and just feel natural, my theory is that there's all those little like unconscious things that happen in your body with the heartbeat and your upbeat, your upstrokes and downstrokes, and just how everything moves in the half a beat where you change a chord, and then where the vocals fit on that. And if you took all that apart and like analyzed it, there's all these little beats, and it's kind of like there's this like a really syncopated drum beat happening if you're taking every little strike and move as all these like 16th notes and weird shit. And it's like, well, actually those vocals now are going to fit super well when you add a cool drum beat to it, and there's a neat little bass fill that goes around where the change goes, you know, like all those little things
Totally.
that might work anyways usually work better if the vocals are written while playing an instrument.
So when something like that happens, when you start putting songs together, is this like you're doing it yourself, you're arranged, and then you just sit down with a bass player and a drummer and you go, it goes like this, and you just play it, and then they, you know, and then they just kind of do their thing? Or is it, or you're kind of like improvising with the guys to some degree? Or do you have a proper lineup? I'm sorry, I know I'm bouncing all over, but do you have a usual couple guys you jam with, or is it kind of like whoever's available kind of thing?
Well, and so that's the weird thing. I mean, it's funny because I'm talking about it as though it's a current thing, but I actually haven't had a real like solo band in years, because probably around 20.
You've been kind of busy with that other thing. Yeah.
The first 5-6 years I was in Tesla, I was busy as hell because I was trying to get my thing happening at the same time.
Right.
And so I'd come home from Tesla tour and I'd be rehearsing 5 nights a week, and then we'd go on little van tours, and you know, when after a while it was too much, and I got really into songwriting. I started going to Nashville, and as like writing to write for other people. Right. So I started to focus more on that, and after 2012, 2013, I was just like, I don't really want to always be busy trying to, you know, playing some shitty club and in a band and no one's there, and like, what am I doing? You know, like.
I know, and it's one of those things where sometimes, especially when you become a grown man, you got kids at home and a wife, and you're like, at some point you kind of have to pick your battles, and you know, you clearly have, and those kind of things will present themselves again, you know, when that moment is like, maybe it's time for, you know, to do your own thing again.
Absolutely. And I was just a quick thing was like, I still have written them and played, and I've done random solo acoustic shows here and there since then, but I have finished finally basically a new solo record that I didn't do everything except the drums on, just kind of again for ease of production, where, you know, I was bringing out, I have a little mobile Pro Tools rig, and so I did a lot of it in dressing rooms and hotel rooms, and then, you know, had a real drummer in Sacramento play it and all that. So that one I do, when it comes out, I definitely want to do some gigs and maybe do a week or two, you know, club dates, and at that point I'll have to, like, you know, hire some dudes. But you know, back in the day when I was doing my solo band for real, we would, you know, I'd usually have the idea of the song, and then we'd jam it out. And, you know, I feel like if you're in a band with great players, you want them to do their thing. You know? Like, I don't want to tell you every line to do on your bass, because you're going to come with something better than I will. So
totally.
You know, this is the general structure. What do you want to do? And then sometimes we would just make shit up together. Like, it wasn't, you know, it's like collaborative at times too. So, you know, I don't know. It's always different. You know, every song is different.
So when does this stumble into Tesla? It's funny because I only today that I looked down and I thought to myself, well, when was that? Because I've known you since probably the first year you joined, I assume, because I feel like you were just like the brand new guy in Tesla, and was it sort of like a confirmed, like, you're the guy, this is your gig, or was it kind of like you're kind of filling a hole for now? We're not quite sure how this is going to go. You're gonna fill in for 15 years. Yeah. You're gonna sit in. Yeah.
We're gonna revisit this arrangement in years.
Or does it start off with very sort of like, we need somebody, and you're the guy? How'd this all come together? How did you audition? How does this all come together?
And it was so crazy, and again speaks to the craziness of haphazard lives, because like, okay, so all this shit we're talking about, starting a solo band and starting to sing, and this was all very short, right? In my mind, it feels like it was this huge shift, right?
Sure, yeah.
6 months, maybe almost a year, probably less. And so I just had a couple friends that I've jammed with. We went in 8 hours live, studio, live on tape, made a demo. I put it on my MySpace page, right? And there was no juice. I didn't have a manager or an investor or a fucking lawyer, like nothing.
Sure,
right?
yeah.
Whenever you hear someone who's done something in the business, they've always got some backstory, and they had some guy working it, and they were flying to meetings. Like, I never flew to a meeting. I was just right, So it was just like, I should record a demo. So we did. We went and recorded like whatever 5 songs I had written. Let's do all of them, and then put it on my MySpace page. Put up like an old picture from.
And for those that don't know, because I don't know what MySpace is. I'm too young, so I'm just kidding.
It's so funny to say it now, like MySpace.
I know, yeah.
God, and now the young people actually don't know. I think my grandpa used to use MySpace.
Yeah, exactly. Ouch, that hurt to hear that. Yeah.
Me too, because that was like, I was never a big computer guy, and
me neither. Yeah, it sort of serves a purpose. It still does, clearly, like we're right now. Yeah.
There's a lot of good, but I'm not like glued to my
right. Yeah.
Anyways,
so are you saying that you put stuff up on MySpace, and this sort of leads to those guys finding you somehow, or?
100%. It was completely by accident. So, and that was the other cool thing about it, of like just going for it and not like overthinking it, and not being like, well, let me wait till it's perfect and let me get a lawyer and a manager. And it was just like, I really want to play a gig. Hey, I know a guy who has a club. And I literally called, hey man, can I like play a gig? He goes, yeah, sure. New band night on Wednesdays. I was like, sweet.
See you Wednesday.
Yeah, literally. And it was like that. I mean, and I put up this MySpace page, not knowing anything what I'm doing. I wasn't like reading about effective social media strategies or anything. Just like, I guess I should do that. Yeah. And so I put up these songs from a demo. I had a couple old live shots from some other band I'd been in before. But there was like a cool one that had been taken by like a real photographer that had been in the crowd, and I got one. So I posted it as like my profile pic.
What guitar were you playing in that photo though? I would imagine Frank and those guys would be very keen on that. Oh, okay, sure. Wow, what year is that guy?
This is I think probably 02 or 03.
Damn, dude,
that's standard, but I call it number 1, and you could see like it's been the number 1 for years. This is.
I was going to say that's you though, right? That's not a.
No,
it's relicked by Dave Roode.
It's another side hustle. I relic guitars.
Yeah, I'll play them for like 20 years.
20 years and a lot of bracelets later, belt rash.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful.
So thanks. I love that guitar. And so, anyways,
because that's going to be important to guys like Frank, looking at like this kid and going like, well, he's playing a dope guitar. He's not playing, totally, some kind of like wacky, like
Totally. Yeah, exactly. So anyways, and I wasn't active. I didn't, I would go on there, but I didn't have some huge nothing. Frank Hammond found my MySpace profile by accident, because they had announced that they were looking for another guitar player, and he contacted a guy here in the Bay Area that I knew. Unbeknownst to me, he was a mutual friend, right? That he had known Frank for years. And I was on that guy's top 8. Do you remember the top 8?
I do. Man, oh man, this is a MySpace. That Tom dude, really, you owe him a.
I owe him at least a beer. It's something, right? So I have this picture. He's like, oh well. So he's literally on the phone to the guy and like, would you be interested in maybe coming up with Jen's? Like, but this guy's got a business. He's got his. Man, I'd love to, but I wouldn't be able to like just up and leave. So, but he's literally on the phone clicking on his MySpace. This guy kind of looks cool. Who's Dave Roode? Do you know that guy? He goes, oh yeah, Dave's hella cool. You should give him a call.
Wow, who is this guy?
It's Craig Bearhorse. He's amazing. He was in a band called the Ruffians.
Okay, yeah, I remember that.
And do you know Billy Rowe?
Yep, I do. Yeah, he's amazing.
Billy Rowe's amazing. And now to the viewers out there, recently joined Buck Cherry, which is awesome because Billy
Rowe's in Buck Cherry?
Dude, Billy Rowe's been in Buck Cherry for like 6 or 7 months.
I did not know that. Billy Rowe is from a band called Jet Boy, and has a company called Rock and Roll Relics that all us guitar nerds love. Yeah,
guitars, holy shit! And he also, before he moved back down to LA, he was up here in the Bay, and he was / still occasionally is in a really killer like 70s rock but album track only cover band called the Butlers.
Cool. Okay.
Which is Craig's band.
Okay.
And so there was all I mean, I don't even think that band was together. But anyway, this guy Craig Bearhorse, so he's, he knows everybody. And the Ruffians were like a new wave of British heavy metal 80s Bay Area band that, was known. Like they'll still go do festivals in Europe. They're great guy, great player. And he has a killer t-shirt company called TNTs, and that's his full-time gig, and they do really well.
Wow. How old were you when you got this call?
27, I think.
Okay, yeah. So you're considerably younger than the guys in Tesla.
I was, yeah.
And you know what's weird? You still are. That's the way that works.
Weird, yeah. It is so weird. So I was, okay, that was a funny story. So I was out one of, musician jobs. I was teaching guitar couple days a week. I was working at a rehearsal studio a couple nights a week. And then I was also a couple days a week walking dogs, right?
Sure.
So I was out up in the Oakland Hills because we go to the people's house and I'm out walking some dog around the fucking park. And Craig calls me and says, hey man, Frank Henner from Tesla? I'm like, fuck yeah. Like, he might email you or something. So if he does, I just want to give you a heads up, that's really him. It's not like some imposter, but
right.
He called me and he didn't say anything about Tesla. He said he's looking for a second guitar player for his solo band. He's going to go out on tour, and
So were you familiar with Tesla? I don't mean to cut you off, but were you like? Because I saw Tesla. Tesla was for those that don't really, to put it in perspective, when Tesla came out, was such a radical. They were mildly radical, only in that they wore jeans. They didn't seem to give a fuck, but they could throw down. The songs were really great. The songs were really catchy, and those two guys could, especially Frank, were like really could hang on the guitar. It was like even like gang. The first thing we ever heard was Modern Day Cowboy, and we were just like, who are these guys? They immediately became everybody's favorite band because there was no sort of pretense of hair and outfits. It was like they were like these guys in jeans and they just threw down. Later on, the Skid Rows and the bands like that sort of seemed to follow that suit. But I think in reality, those guys deserve a lot of love for that sort of like we're going to step away from all that, playing like Les Pauls and Brian playing a big old T-Bird and that kind of stuff. It was like, wow, it was like so jarring in a way compared to what was actually going on at the time. I saw them open for Motley, tons of bands. They were always like the opening band every time they come to town. I'd be like, and they were an amazing live band. So I don't know what your history is with the band being that much younger.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I was a huge Tesla fan. My little bit of a weird way, just because I was younger. So, and I don't think there was a rock radio station in the Bay. If there was, I didn't know about it. I was a little kid. So, I bought records that I would read about in Metal Edge,
Sure, yeah.
And so when the acoustic record came out.
Again, I'm too young to know what Metal Edge magazine is. I think I had every copy, but yeah, go ahead.
I was like a weird old hoarder when I was already like 15. I had like 1,000 magazines.
Yeah. Those were the days.
Rip, Circus, all that shit.
Hit Parader, all
Hit
that.
Parader, oh hell yeah. And then all the guitar magazines.
Yeah,
so,
totally.
anyways, I read about it in Metal Edge or Circus or something, and went and bought the acoustic record and was like, oh my God, and fell in love with it. And that was all I knew of Tesla. I didn't have any of the stuff before it. So I only knew the acoustic versions of all those songs for years. And then, well, at least 1 or 2 years, and then Psychotic Sepulchre came out. And I bought that when it was the new record and got super into that. It's still my favorite Tesla.
Yeah.
And so I was always a big fan. And then right after that, when I was in high school, they broke up for a few years, and I never got to see them live. And then a few, you know, that was another weird coincidence. In the year and a half, about the year and a half before I ended up joining Tesla, I finally got to go see him for the first time. And I saw him like 3 times in that year.
Really?
Just kind of, we went to go see him at the Fillmore, and then we saw him at this other show. They just randomly like got to see Tesla a hell of time. It was so weird, you know. And
was it always with Tommy?
Yeah, I never saw him with anyone else or as a
Was there was a brief interim of somebody else after Tommy, wasn't there?
Yeah, well,
I don't remember. I think it might have been like just a, you know.
There was never like a guy in the band. There was over his whole sort of tenure before, you know, up until I joined the band. There was a couple times, I think more in the 2000s. I don't know. There was at least one time where they kind of had to go as a 4-piece for a while. Okay. And then there was like one guy stepped in for maybe a couple weeks, and I feel like that was maybe the only time. I can't remember.
Okay, that sounds about right. I mean, so how does this work? Do you get an email?
Oh yes, right. So that was it. So I got home from walking dogs, and I opened up my MySpace, and there was a MySpace message, and it's like, hey, this is Frank. I was like, hell, that's Frank, right? Because I had no connection to the band. That's another thing, because I'm only an hour from Sacramento, so a lot of times people think, oh well, you must have known, you know, like when someone joins an established band, you always find out that it's the drummer's brother, or for him, or you know, they grew up together.
It usually is the case, because it's always kind of like, well, what about him? You know, the other guy that we know who's a great guitar player. Just get so and so. He's right over there. Yeah.
Right. And like, we know he's cool. He hangs out with us anyways. Or, you know, like
exactly.
I think about it like, if you know, after being in it for so long, like, it's scary. Like, hey, let's invite someone we've never met to like join our family overnight.
Yeah.
Hope it's cool. Like,
yeah, exactly. Hope he's not a drug addict, or, you know, isn't as good as we think he is. Yeah, all that stuff. Like, so is the next step you going down to a rehearsal space, or how does that work?
No, it was more haphazard shit, dude. It was crazy. So it just so, like, when I think about it, it's just
you can't possibly like write a sort of like just follow the steps of Dave Roode, because no one else could possibly follow these steps.
Seriously. So it was like a Tuesday or something, and like, hey, just didn't say anything about Tesla. I'm looking for a rhythm guy for my thing, blah blah blah. I'm playing a gig in Sacramento this Friday, and I'm gonna have a couple people get up and jam me. Do you want to come? I was like, hell yes. So like 3 days later, I drove up and sat in with him at this gig. Like we hung out in the afternoon. I think I came at like sound check, and I brought my number one. Great. and watched sound check and like met him. He was the only guy in Tesla I hadn't met, because at those other shows, I literally had been the weirdo waiting backstage and like, hey man, here's my demo. You know, literally, I was that dude.
That's so awesome.
So awesome. And I never met Frank, so I finally did after this gig. So he already knows that he's got some ulterior motives for having all these people come up and jam. But
that's actually genius of Frank. Like, it's an audition that is like not an audition. I'm playing here anyway. Let's get some guys up to jam and we'll try them out. And it's like, you're immediately like, nope. You know, and then like, oh, okay, yeah.
Right, because I mean, I would imagine it'd be a better audition than a real audition, because, you know, audition's going to be weird and it's going to be a different vibe, and you don't know, okay, he can play, but is he going to be good in front of the crowd? You know, like, exactly.
It's an audition in front of an audience. That makes a big difference. Yeah.
And then especially not knowing it's an audition, like, so you're not nervous and like, what could, you know, so it actually is super smart. And anyways, we hung out, and like, he took me back to his house, like, you know, in between sound check and the gig, and we hung out and we played a little, and he did sort of mention, I'm actually looking for Tesla. This solo band thing is real, but it's pretty much training for summertime.
Cool.
And would you be interested? Yeah.
Well, the crazy thing about Frank though is like I've jammed with Frank like randomly quite several years ago, and I've never known anybody. It's staggering. He gets up on stage and does like Frampton Comes Alive like note for note with the talk box, and he's just like, what's happening here? Like you're like, and he just knows. I kind of have the reputation of knowing a lot of songs, and I can throw down like right now 30 songs I can just call out and jam. But I was like, not the ones Frank knows. The ones Frank knows are no joke. Like, like just super deep, like not deep cuts, but more like, they're not like, let's jam Rebel Yell. It's like, he knows crazy shit. And like the talk box solo for Do You Feel Like We Do or whatever, it's mind blowing. So did you actually do that with him, that run of solo dates?
So I did, yeah. So we hung out at his house, jammed a little bit, and it went really well. It felt so natural and good. And the first time we played together, which I think actually was in his garage, was like before that gig. It really did feel like we've been playing together for years, which was very weird and cool.
That's so cool. Yeah.
Like, oh wow, it just kind of makes sense. And so then we went back, did the gig, and I did Stranglehold and Walk This Way. And there's actually YouTube of it, which is crazy. You can see this footage of the first time we ever played, and
that's
it was really
awesome.
Again, it felt so natural, just like we're jamming, and I wasn't really nervous. I knew at the time, but it was still like it wasn't like an offer. He just was sort of saying, "This is sort of what I'm looking at." So I was just sort of juiced, and like it was packed. It was like 300 to 400 people. It was hella fun.
Yeah.
And then a couple of days later, he drove down to Oakland to the studio I worked at, and like we started going over Tesla songs, and then. A couple of weeks after that, I think maybe a month, I went out and did this solo tour. He was in an RV, and it was the first time I'd ever been on a tour more than like 3 days in a van, And,
Right.
So he was like, wow, cool, we got beds in this RV, this is awesome, And it was so fun, and we were playing like 90% Tesla because it was really secretly training.
Interesting.
For the summer, and I did a couple little tours like that with him, and after we come home, and then he asked me to come up and introduce me to Brian one day, and then a couple weeks later introduced me to Jeff, and Troy lived in Arizona at that point, so I didn't meet Troy, but just so we'd all get along. Like we never played, and then it was like, do you want to be? And like, yeah.
So is this the kind of thing that they trust Frank to vouch for the guy? Like they're gonna, and he's like, this is the guy, and they all kind of go, well, if Frank's happy, then we're happy.
I think so. I think that's basically, it's like he was sort of in charge of doing it. He'd been flying all over, jamming with people, trying people out, and nothing really had fit yet. And so they were just like, again, sort of trusting Frank's word on it, and he was excited about it, and I was super excited, and like the little hangout meets with everybody was cool, and everyone was super nice, and all got along, and everyone's really super down to earth. I've always said it's like being in a band with like a garage band with your friends, except there's hell of people there. Like it shows like, a lot of people show up, but otherwise it's really loose and relaxed, and like, I don't know, you want to do that? Like, sure, I guess. Like it's just so chill, right? It's not like a master plan. It's just like being in a band, but there's more people. So it happened by no audition, no weird official thing. And so 2 months later, I'm in Tesla and we're playing gigs all summer. It was nuts.
That's so crazy. Like that, to hear it like that is like, I'm sure you must have mentioned something about this before, because it's just like, that's never the way things happen. Well, that's not true. There are some times where it's like a tour is happening and they need to fill a slot like immediately. So just get somebody. Oh, Dave's got a guitar. It's like, he has a guitar. I don't know if you can play it, but
once I saw photos, I don't know.
yeah, exactly. And then that happens sometimes too. And then all of a sudden that guy is in the band. But that's a really great way to do it. And how long before you guys start talking about writing, recording, that kind of stuff? Any of that kind of business?
Again, crazy fast. Like stuff that, like looking back on, it's like, wow, we really jumped straight into it, because my first show was in like June, that summer, I mean, I didn't meet Troy until the first day of rehearsals for
Really?
which is crazy because he lived in the state, you know. And then the crew guys like he's like, "Hi, I'm your guitar tech." Like, what's a guitar tech? You know, like,
I love that. I love that because that's one of my favorite things is that thing of like when you're accustomed to stringing and tuning your own guitar and setting up your own amp, and then one day someone shows up and goes, no, I do that now, and you go, well, what the hell am I supposed to do? You know, it's funny. But it's funny how quickly we become accustomed to that. Now I'm at home going like, oh yeah, I got to change the strings on this guitar. You know, it's like,
strings are like 14 years old on these guitars. Like, oh no, I can't do it.
You call your guy and he's like,
I live 3 hours away from you. Please.
That's so funny. So how soon? So then you end up like in the actual process of being in the band. You're no longer just kind of like this. Is there a weird phase where the crowd is like, who's this guy? Or does that even really kind of happen?
No, and that was the other weird thing that, I mean, I was always just so always blown away how cool the fans were, because there was never one show where it was like, fuck you, man.
That one guy.
No. And I think people were just so excited because, you know, the Teslas, again, speaking, because I was always a fan growing up, dude, they're just a band you just like. It's fun. They make you feel good. And so when you're at a Tesla show, you're having fun, you know? Totally. It's not like a metal thing. And there's not aggro. It's just like, yeah, this is cool.
Totally.
So if there's a new guy up there, but it's still good and it's still Jeff, you're like, yeah, man, you know? And from far away, you probably can't tell the difference. Like, and you're drunk.
Some long-haired guy with a guitar, it's all the same, yeah.
Seriously, after a couple of beers, people can't tell the difference. So, you know, right? But I'm teasing, but it was always a really warm welcome, and so that just was non-existent because you know, I've heard bad stories from guys that I know who've filled in or, you know, joined bigger bands, and people are like, you know, where's Joe Perry kind of signs, you know?
It's different, and there's always this sort of percentage of people who are really invested as to who you are. And you and I know lots of bands around the scene who are becoming less and less original members.
Right.
And it's sort of like, there's going to be the passionate people, and there's a surprisingly gigantic amount of people who don't really care. You know, they just kind of like, I love these tunes and you know, whatever. That's not the original singer. And then you just go, oh, whatever, you know, I love this song though, you know.
I know that's that song thing, because like, I think not only that, I think a lot of that big sort of chunk of the crowd, not only do they not care, I don't even know. Like, it could be 3 new guys and they don't know the fucking difference. And it's not even a bad thing. It's just like, I don't care who's in the band. Dude, I got this record when I was 15 and I love it. I'm 40 now and I love this record. I want to go hear these songs because it's taking me back to high school and all this shit. And as long as it sounds the same, they probably won't even notice. And that's cool.
That was a big lesson to learn anyway, because as a music nerd, I am that guy, and I'll be like, oh, that was 1973. That was Mick Ronson playing guitar on that, you know. And I realize that not everybody's like that. Most people are like, I don't care who played guitar on that. I love this song. You know what I mean? And so it's true when they come and see Tesla, and like you say, it's like, that's Tesla. It doesn't matter. I mean, the reality is that, you know, you've been there long enough that you were it's like if you lived in a town, if you moved to Vegas for 15 years, well, then you're local. You know, if you've been in Tesla for 15 years, you're the guitar player. You know, you're like a longtime member of the band. I mean, you're probably there as long as, how long was the band around by the time you joined the band? There's some math to do.
There was some math, but I know that
it was, to my understanding, there would be no math involved today. So
hey, you said there was no math in this interview?
yelling at your publicist. Yeah, what the hell? But anyway, no. So
the cabinet, but that's its own whole problem.
I don't want to keep you forever because I know that, you know, we could be down this rabbit hole for a long time. But
yeah, sorry, but I'm probably going on too long with this.
Oh, I love it. It's like the process of being in Tesla from the get-go. You're pretty much like the guy. It's not like there's ever a feeling of like you're on some sort of like, you know, tenuous kind of like impermanent thing. You're the guitar player.
We started straight in at these and it's like summer Fridays, festivals, and all of a sudden 10,000 people, you know, ridiculous stuff. And in the fall, we went in to make a record. So, I mean, I had been in the band for 3 months. And
up to that point, your only recording experience was your own stuff at this. So you hadn't done the big recording studio.
Basically, one of the bands I had been in, we did have an investor, so we went into the plant in Sausalito and
cool.
had like a real engineer and like, you know, so
Okay.
I'd had a little bit of experience, but you know, not a lot, you know.
Sure, yeah.
So it was still new and a pretty cool experience. So we went in to make a covers record, so we didn't have to. At least it was nice to just sort of get your feet wet with that without doing the writing process.
That's a cool record.
Oh, thanks. It was so much fun, you know, and it was.
Yeah.
It was easy. It was all organic. We did it live on tape. We did it live in the studio.
Cool.
It was super fun. And then toured that for a year. And then it was like, let's write a record. And so by 2008, we were, you know, writing original songs, and they were like super down to like, no, right? You got any riffs? Like, let's write songs together. It wasn't any weird. You're not
cool. That's
so that was like super fun, you know, or super just a cool situation. Because again, most bands probably wouldn't do that.
That's great, man. And it's been really awesome watching you kind of like, it just seems so seamless. Like you were just part of the band and now you're, you know, invaluable to that situation. To me, it's like, it's such a great situation to be a part of. What is the plan coming up? Like now that the world is kind of opening up for Tesla, do you know?
Yeah, we're so excited because we're starting already, you know, we're planning like rehearsals and shit because that gig starting in the beginning of August. So
yay.
You know, it was so nice. I was expecting no shows until 2022. So I'm already like, yes, sweet. We get in a couple months early, you know.
I was saying to you before we started recording this was that whole thing of like, it seemed like nothing. And then, we're going to take it easy. And then all of a sudden, boom, my phone's exploding with all my friends are going on the road. I'm like, whoa, what's going on? So it's exciting to see that you guys, do you have anything on the calendar yet? Or is it still kind of,
no, we've got already, I mean, we started announcing stuff a couple of weeks ago. We've got like a 3-week run in August.
Great.
Headlining shows, and then we're doing a show with Kid Rock in Michigan, and then we're doing a show with Skinner, and now that's turned into a bunch of shows with Skinner for the next couple months after that. So I'm like, hell yeah, man, it's gonna be so much fun.
It's time, man. It's time. I'm so excited to see you back out there. Let's talk about that Flying V, the Dave Roode signature Flying V. I'm enamored with that. I've never understood, and please explain to me the painted fretboard. I think that's so rad.
Oh, thanks, dude. It's so, you know what? It's crazy. It's actually wood. It's like a hard maple fretboard, but they've got this, I can't even remember what it's called, but some kind of like a UV lacquer kind of thing that is white, but it's not. So it's not actually painted. And people say, "Was it plastic?" Or like, no, it's just a regular maple fretboard, but it's got this layer of coating on it, and it plays great. It feels, you know, because it is wood, so it just feels like normal guitar, but it looks different. And
I've seen it at the store, and I'm always like remarking on what a sharp looking guitar that is. I'm sure it sounds awesome. Well, I've seen you play it on the internets. I've seen you play. I haven't seen you play it live yet, but man, that thing is so great. And getting your own signature guitar is a big deal. You know, that's
ridiculous. Again, accidental, haphazard craziness. But yeah, it was.
How did it come about exactly? Like, when did you start talking to the Epiphone folks?
Well, I'd had a really good relationship with them. Anyways, I accidentally met the president of Epiphone like a year after I joined Tesla at NAMM, and I was playing a different Epiphone, an Alley Cat with Tesla. So, and he's like, "Oh, that's cool. Super nice guy." We stayed in touch. We started touring a bunch with Def Leppard around 2015, and it was on one of the first runs we did. All these big giant arenas and amphitheaters sold out. It was crazy. It was the first time I'd ever done a, like, not one off, but like a full run, like where every night is like that. And I had this old Tom Petty T-shirt that I would sleep in, and I couldn't sleep. 3 a.m. I like go to the bathroom and like I look in the mirror. I was like, oh man, that's so cool. There was like this cartoon Flying V on it, and I'd be really wanting a beat. So I go back to my bunk because I can't sleep, and I'm thinking, I'm emailing the guy I know at Epiphone, and I said, hey, could you make me one of these? Send a photo of my T-shirt, like in my bunk, like just ghetto, right? and I never heard anything back. I was like, yeah, I shouldn't have done that. I mean, that's something you do at 3 a.m. and you regret. I should have sent that email. 3 months later, we get to Nashville and I get a text, hey, what time should we come with your guitar? what guitar? And like that V, like, oh, well, hell, anytime you want. And so they came and they had made just a random one-off. And there was a couple of differences. And I was like, this is amazing. Thank you. You know, it was so cool. And I played that for like a year on tour, maybe 2. And I just loved it. And they just made, it wasn't a signature model. They probably just put it together with spare parts, you know, but it looked cool. And then after a while I started noticing, God, every time I play this, people come up to me after and ask about it. Like people in the business, fans, everyone's like, what is up with that white V, dude? That shit is awesome. And so eventually I was like, hey guys, I'm getting a lot of interest. What about like a signature? And they're like, hell yes, let's do it. And
wow,
you know, it was very, very quick. And the very first prototype they sent me, which were just a couple of tweaks, you know, like plain tweaks and some electronics and stuff. It was like, I was like, I don't want to change anything. This is perfect. And they're like, cool, we'll launch it now in January. Like, all right, I guess that's happening now. And it just was that.
It's such a beautiful guitar with the what is it, like a red kind of tortoise idea going on? Yeah.
Yeah, red tortoise shell and like the
Yeah.
little touches, right? Because I mean, it's the little things that make something pop differently. Like we tried one with a different fretboard. It looked cool, but then it was more just of a white beat. So it's like the special thing is the white neck. You know,
that's what really makes it pop. I mean, you're right about the input range.
That little 70s like stuff, right?
Super dope, yeah. But that white neck really like takes it to a whole other level, man. It's like, I mean, Billy Gibbons and guys like that will have like those kind of finished necks, finished fretboards, and I'm like, what is that? Or Prince or something like that. I'm like, so now you're in the Prince and Billy Gibbons category in my mind. That's a good category, baby.
That's a good category. Well, that's pretty awesome, man. You know what if I got to play one of Prince's crazy weird cymbal guitars?
Did you?
Yeah, years ago, he was still alive. It was a Schecter, and I knew someone at the booth, and it was like a display only, do not touch. But he was like, "Hey man, play it." Like, yeah, I was like,
hell yeah!
And it had been at Prince's. Like he sent it back for some. So he had played that guitar, tiny. It was like a violin. Jesus,
really?
The tiniest little neck, but it was so cool. I was like, it was all purple frets. It was so cool.
A friend of mine has one of those cloud ones, you know, the Purple Rain thing. And it's tiny as well. I'm a big cat, so that's why things like Flying V's or, you know, ES335s or 355s, whatever, those kind of things look, I feel like, more normal with those, because you're not a short guy. How tall are you?
I'm a little over 6'2", so not as tall as you, but yeah, on the bigger side.
Tall guy, yeah. Because I love juniors and stuff like that. They're some of my favorite guitars, but they look so dorky on me. You know, it's it's like,
gotta consider that stuff. You know.
I know. I had a dream of like finding an old '50s Junior, but I was always like, I had to abandon that dream when I just saw pictures of myself playing one, and I thought, it's not working.
It looks like a toy guitar. Yeah. It's like a reverse Angus Young. It's not cool.
Yeah, where Angus looks like this with an SG. The SG actually looks tiny on me too. It's like this weird thing. Yeah.
It's so weird. Man, you know what? I remember though the first time that we met was before you were a Slash.
Yeah.
I was on a solo tour.
Mm-hmm.
And we opened for you guys at the Dive Bar.
That's right, in Vegas, yeah.
Right, and after, I think it was maybe you guys did your set or towards the end of your set, you invited us up to jam, and we did Paradise City.
That's right, yeah.
And you sang it and killed it. It was like amazing. It was so much fun. And then, 2 years later or whatever.
It was funny to kind of like
hey, Todd Kerns is in Flat. What? Oh, that's awesome and good for Todd. Like I was so stoked for you when I heard that.
Yeah, I remember you come up to the Warfield and stuff like that, different shows around the Bay Area, and we would hang out. Yeah, I can't wait to hang out again. I'm like still in COVID mind. I'm like kind of like, I'm like, I got to get out of the studio, I think, get back on some stages. I think you're going to have that sort of christening with that baptism of getting on stage and being like, okay, I'm back. For me, it's kind of like without that, I still kind of have this sort of like 1 foot in and 1 foot out. So I got to get my shit together, basically is what I'm trying to say.
Well, I can't wait till we get to
my fighting weight,
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. Well, I'm so happy we got to hang out, buddy. I really can't wait to see you somewhere. Whenever you're coming through my neck of the woods, I'm going because I want to see that guitar cranked to 12.
Yes.
Piercing my head.
This is gonna happen, man. Absolutely.
Absolutely. I love you. Big love. Big love to the family, my man.
Will too, man. Thank you so much for having me, man. That was awesome.
You too. Talk soon, okay?
Okay. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.